During my recent solar imaging session, I witnessed several intriguing transits. First, a plane passed by, followed by a bird. However, there was something else that caught my attention, something mysterious and unfamiliar. It moved slowly, was relatively small, and had a dark silhouette against the sunlit backdrop. I was baffled in the moment, and even now I'm still pondering its identity. Driven by curiosity, I delved into research, scouring for clues to decipher this enigmatic object. I generated multiple theories, analyzing every detail meticulously. Yet, as I sifted through the possibilities, one conclusion emerged as the most plausible. But before we jump to conclusions, let's examine the logical candidates and eliminate them systematically. It's essential to weigh the evidence and apply rational thinking. Yet, as I pondered further, a whimsical notion danced in my mind. Aliens. Could it be? The idea tickled my imagination, but of course, we mustn't leap to such extraordinary conclusions without solid evidence. So, let's review the list. First, we consider the mundane possibilities, ruling out each with careful consideration. As we progress, the truth gradually unveils itself, dispelling any notions of extraterrestrial visitors. Yet, the thrill of the unknown lingers, reminding us that the universe is full of wonders, both earthly and beyond. High-flying bird. Well, it's clear from the get-go that we can rule out the possibility of our mystery object being a low-flying bird. However, let's entertain the idea that it might be a high flyer. To assess this, we can examine three key characteristics. Firstly, birds tend to be swift flyers, even at high altitudes. Secondly, their flight paths are usually non-linear, reflecting their freedom in the sky. And thirdly, their silhouette often takes on an oval shape due to the wings positioning relative to the body. Fortunately, our object doesn't fit any of these criteria. It moves at a different pace, follows a distinct path, and lacks the characteristic oval silhouette. So, it's safe to say that we can eliminate the possibility of it being a bird from our investigation. Is it a bug initially? Distinguishing our mystery object from a bug poses a bit of a challenge. Many sightings like this one are often attributed to bugs. However, in our specific case, there's a crucial detail that definitively rules out the possibility of it being a bug. If you examine our object closely, you'll notice its high contrast and sharpness. It's incredibly well focused. For a bug to create an image resembling this, it would need to be positioned very close to the telescope's front glass or even right next to the camera sensor. However, objects positioned that close exhibit distinct characteristics. Objects so near the camera sensor wouldn't display any atmospheric shimmer because they're essentially too close to interact with the air. Yet, upon observing our object, you'll notice a slight wobbling and shimmering, indicative of atmospheric interference. Therefore, we can conclude with certainty that our object isn't in close proximity to our camera, but rather exists out there in the vastness beyond. Moving on to our next candidate. Planets. Considering planets as a candidate is quite intriguing, although it's ultimately incorrect in this context. The resemblance to a Mercury transit is notable, but there were no planetary transits recorded during the session, ruling out this possibility swiftly. Nonetheless, there's a fascinating history behind mistaken identifications of objects within Mercury's orbit as planets. Historically, prominent astronomers like Leverrier from France, known for discovering Neptune through a combination of mathematical calculations and observations, speculated about similar phenomena around Mercury. They observed anomalies in Mercury's orbit and entertained the notion of an undiscovered planet lurking near the Sun. This sparked a significant search for the hypothetical planet, aptly dubbed Vulcan. This pursuit wasn't merely an amateur endeavor. It involved esteemed astronomers and garnered significant attention. However, it wasn't until Albert Einstein's theory of relativity and the observation of a total solar eclipse that a mathematical model and experimental evidence emerged, debunking the existence of Vulcan once and for all. Mystery planet. It's also quite reasonable for us to dismiss the possibility of it being an asteroid. If it were as sizable as what I observed through my modest telescope, it would have garnered widespread attention. We'd be inundated with wall-to-wall news coverage, with headlines screaming about potential world-ending scenarios or hosting apocalypse parties. However, there was no such hysteria. Granted, being close to the Sun does make it more challenging for astronomers to track objects, but the sheer size and proximity of an asteroid would have undoubtedly made it impossible to miss. We would have heard endless news reports about an asteroid approaching Earth. Suffice it to say, there was none of that. Satellite. But shifting our focus to a more common explanation, let's consider satellites. Initially, my inclination was to label the object as a satellite, which remained my primary hypothesis throughout much of this investigation. However, my confidence in this theory is waning, and here's why. Upon scrutinizing the object's transit path across the Sun, it appears mostly linear, but lacks the precision one would expect from a genuine satellite transit. While it's conceivable that minor recording anomalies might cause slight deviations, I lack sufficient data to confirm this conclusively. Furthermore, when assessing the object's size, it appears smaller than what I'd anticipate from the International Space Station, ISS, at a similar position relative to the Sun. Yet, this observation isn't definitive, considering the ISS's unique status as one of the largest artificial satellites, coupled with its lower orbit proximity. However, the most significant discrepancy arises in the object's speed. It takes approximately 13 seconds for our object to complete its transit, whereas the ISS, serving as a representative of lower orbit satellites, would accomplish the same journey in under a second. This substantial disparity raises doubts about the object's satellite classification. While orbital mechanics dictate that objects farther from their center of mass exhibit slower angular velocities, potentially leading to longer transit times, this explanation contradicts our observations of the object's size. Despite its considerable angular size, it doesn't align with the expected dimensions of satellites in lower orbits. Considering satellite classifications, we could explore satellites in middle Earth orbit, predominantly GPS satellites, and even venture into geostationary and geosynchronous satellites. However, the object's characteristics don't neatly align with any specific satellite category. In conclusion, while I can't definitively rule out the possibility of the object being a satellite, it seems increasingly improbable. The discrepancies between its observed characteristics and those typical of satellites cast doubt on this hypothesis. Balloon now, on to our final contender and, in my estimation, the most plausible: balloons. Residing in the bustling DFW metroplex, a sprawling urban expanse teeming with millions of inhabitants, it's not difficult to envision a scenario where a helium balloon, set loose during a celebration, drifts into the air currents and fortuitously crosses my imaging path as it passes in front of the Sun. Considering the circumstances, the notion of a balloon, even one at high altitude, seems quite plausible. The observed characteristics align well with this hypothesis. The near-linear yet slightly wavering path could easily be attributed to the balloon following subtle variations in air currents over time. As for size, it wouldn't need to be as large if it were much closer to us, although specifics remain uncertain. Regarding speed, research suggests that helium balloons can ascend to cruising altitudes for commercial aircraft before bursting. During my imaging session, I even captured the vapor trail of an airplane for comparison, suggesting a similar altitude. This aligns reasonably well with the speed of the observed object, further supporting the balloon theory. However, it's essential to acknowledge the possibility of alternative balloon types, such as weather balloons, though hot air balloons are seldom seen in this area. Nevertheless, stranger occurrences have unfolded in the US before. So, what are your thoughts? Was it a balloon, a satellite, or perhaps something I overlooked entirely? Feel free to share your insights in the comments below. And if you've encountered similar phenomena, I'd love to hear about it. Until next time, folks, see you around.